Hello, everyone. Welcome to the College Football Insiders. This is an emergency podcast. The Michigan NCAA investigation has concluded, and the NCAA has handed down their penalties to the Wolverines, and much of it financial in nature, as we've seen kind of a trend for the NCAA in some major infraction cases over the last several years, penalizing schools and programs financially while also handing out show cause penalties. But here's a quick breakdown of what we got, guys, before we really get into reacting to this and also some of our reporting around it. The financial penalties reportedly probably going to eclipse $30 million in total. Those will include 10% of the football budget, 2 years of postseason revenue, including bowl games, potential playoff berths, and then also what would amount to 10% of the scholarships awarded to Michigan's football program. That brings up a big question to me, because how many scholarships are they actually paying for in Michigan's football program? Because remember, now after the House settlement, you can provide more scholarships. Also, an interesting matter in here as far as it affecting the football program moving forward, a 25% reduction in official visits, which if those are official visits on campus, didn't the NCAA just allow that to be unlimited? So we'll have to get into that here in a minute as we understand all this. A 14-week prohibition on recruiting communications in the football program, and then also show cause penalties. Sharon Moore now under a 2-year show cause order. He will be suspended for 2 games this season, weeks 3 and week 4. So he will not miss the game against his alma mater, Oklahoma, in week 2. And he will also be suspended for the first game in the opener for Michigan in 2026, which is expected to be played against Western Michigan in Germany. And then, of course, the former central figures in all of this. Jim Harbaugh receives a 10-year show cause penalty, which does not begin until the end of his current 4-year show cause penalty, tied to the, the hamburger scandal, if you want to call it that. Connor Stalions, the infamous Connor Stalions, gets an 8-year show cause order. He, of course, no longer even in college football, and last we heard was on the high school level. Also, Denard Robinson, the famous Michigan football player who also was on staff, he receives a 3-year show cause order. So that's the breakdown of it, guys. Again, the hefty penalties and all this really is the financial hit. Potentially more than $30 million if you break it all down. But again, those numbers aren't official. And some of that money is money that Michigan was never going to see, so to speak, before they hand it off. It's just the NCAA is going to grab that money from the bowls in the postseason before Michigan gets it. So, guys, my first question is, I know it's a big one, but is this about what you expected? Is it fair considering the violations they found in all of this investigation over the last 2 years?
I think it was what was expected for sure. I would have been shocked at this point to see a postseason ban or something like in this current structure of college athletics. And I actually think the postseason ban element of that is interesting, given the way the NCAA, for once, kind of protected future student athletes in a way we haven't seen before. I'm sure there's a lot of upset Oklahoma State fans out there thinking about how this went down. But yeah, I mean, in this era, in order to really punish a team, if you're not going to take away their national championship, which they did not, and ultimately, like, Michigan's the victor here, right? Like, hail to the victors. They won the 23 national championship. None of that changes. But $30 million in penalties potentially is not insignificant, especially in the rev share era. And I mean, Michigan announced in June they were laying off 10% of their athletic staff workforce in order to reduce their deficit with their budget. And this certainly hampers their ability to be as competitive. But I mean, ultimately, Michigan has deep coffers and they'll be fine. But I think this is just the way the NCAA has to go about punishing teams in 2025. If we ever see an infractions case like this again, I think is another thought here, but we could go in a million directions.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Chris is saying. I think, the NCAA was put in an impossible situation here, and people love to blame the NCAA. It's easy to do. But no matter what they did with these penalties, either Michigan fans were going to be mad, feeling like they got hammered too hard, or basically the rest of the world, Michigan versus everybody, we're going to feel like they didn't get enough. And so they had to try to kind of land the plane in a difficult situation. I think they did a good job of it. And I think that I saw, some people think it could get up to 35 million. I went and looked. If you look at, this is based on USA Today's database, total spending for an entire athletic department, 35 million. Schools like Toledo, which beat Mississippi State in football last year, Middle Tennessee State, Western Kentucky, Troy. That's what their entire athletic department spends in a year. And this is what they're potentially getting fined. So it's not an insignificant amount of money. Chris is right. Michigan has more money than probably anybody, but it's still real. They lost money even after winning a national championship. They've had some athletic department financial woes. So this is a real blow, I think. But I think the postseason ban is dead. Chris hit on Oklahoma State, the last one to go through it. It's not fair to the student athletes to do that. It's better to set up financial penalties. And it's also easy to just hit on Jim Harbaugh and Connor Stallions. They're not coming back. We know that. It's an easy win for them. They could have made it a 30-year show cause penalty. Doesn't really matter. Harbaugh's not coming back. So it's an easy win for the NCAA to look like, man, we really crushed Harbaugh. They know he's not coming back. He fought with them on everything. So to me, it's an easy win. It doesn't really change anything. But I thought they did about as good as they could do. But again, plenty of people I've seen are freaking out about it, which is what you kind of expected with this type of treacherous, challenging situation.
By the way, just a little bit of context about the $30 million penalty, essentially. Michigan football made $150 million in revenue in 2023, 2024. So that's essentially what rough math is. That's a sixth of that. That's not insignificant. But Michigan is equipped to weather that. And as we've seen with some pretty high NIL payments, people like Bryce Underwood over the last couple of years, Michigan can find money when it needs to.
That's what I want to bring up. The rumor of Bryce Underwood getting paid $10 million potentially throughout his career. Triple that. Get 3 Bryce Underwoods and you get a national championship at Michigan.
It was a little bit less, Brandon, reporting wise. I can say it was over $2 million a year, but I don't think it was a 4-year contract necessarily.
It's not funny, but it's amazing in this day and age when athletic departments are trying to cut budgets and save money, and everybody's wondering, this is a stiff financial penalty, and then everybody's like, well, they'll be okay because they have money everywhere, but yet the little man has to pay for it. Staffers get laid off, the ones that are actually working hard behind the scenes and aren't cheating. But that's a soapbox for me to get on another day. The actual hard workers are getting punished for all this that weren't involved. I thought what was really interesting in all this was going through the 30-something page document of these findings and looking at some of the juicy quotes, guys. Some of this really interesting stuff. So, for example, the NCAA, as you guys know, has straight up said, Coach Sharon Moore, back when he was an assistant coach then, within 30 minutes of the Yahoo Sports story coming out about Connor Stallions, he deleted 52 text messages involving Connor Stallions. And of course, they're trying to recover all that. You just can't delete evidence. We've been knowing that for quite some time. And I think...
Can you throw it in the pond, though, Brandon?
You can throw it in the pond. And he admitted, Connor Stallions admitted to the NCAA, yeah, I broke my phone up in 1,000 pieces and I threw it in the pond.
I think these guys didn't learn the necessary lessons from The Wire. I mean, you got to get some burners, get some different things. Come on. What do we do? Get the Batman phone. What's happening here?
Yeah.
You gotta cross state lines to get the burners, what I learned in The Wire.
Exactly. Yeah. You got to be careful about how you do it.
Omar's coming. All right. So here's some interesting quotes.
If the NCAA is Omar, it's more like Omar from the last season of The Wire at this point.
Spoiler alert.
My bad for the people who haven't watched a 20-year-old episode.
Yeah, 20-year-old show. So the NCAA, we've all been saying this for a while, is that things are just, we say toothless. They're not necessarily toothless, but this is probably going to be the last major infraction case that they ever deal with themselves. Because College Sports Commission, which was created after the House settlement, is going to be handling a lot of governance and things with the power conferences going forward in the future here. And we've been seeing over the last several years, the NCAA has been sued over and over again, been challenged and everything. I think it's fascinating that this is probably the last breath of the NCAA's enforcement model. I think it's dead in a lot of ways. It's going to be handling much smaller fish. Another thing here, the NCAA said that they had the grounds to ban for multiple years Michigan from the postseason, but they didn't do so because of some changes in bylaws. And also they didn't want to punish Michigan for things that happen with coaches and former people that are no longer there, and that would affect the current student athletes. But I would argue, and what we're going to see in the future here under future investigations, whatever they might be, major infraction cases, if the College Sports Commission is going to be handling that, they have said while they've been developing it that their investigations are going to be much more nimble and they're going to be able to do things faster. So a lot of reasons I believe that the NCAA was unable to give Michigan a postseason ban. It's just simply because their investigation had to go on 2 years, and the NCAA is notoriously slow. It's a battleship trying to go through the Panama Canal at this point. The CSC is leaner, and we'll see if it ends up being meaner when we end up seeing future major infraction cases, guys.
I think that's a really good point. And like just texting with people in the industry right now, like obviously hot topic of conversation. And I think all of us have been texting people. I was texting with the Big Ten GM who just kind of said the punishment wasn't a big deal. Like they won their national championship and the penalty, like the financial penalties are fine, but like you can work past that. At the end of the day, if you can't, he was essentially saying, if you can't do anything in season, if you can't immediately suspend and dock wins from a team and be nimble enough to really attack a team in the moment about the violations they allegedly, I guess at the time, committed, then what's the point of the infractions process? And I think there's a real hope in college football, across college athletics, that if the CSE takes over more of this and as individual conferences gain more power, that they will be able to be a little more nimble in these situations. Because without the ability to do that, like you're just never going to be able to issue penalties when it matters and when it actually affects the outcome of the season and the games.
And Tyler Chambers asks in the chat here, when or will the NCAA ever truly die? It won't, as long as it's running the NCAA basketball tournaments, because the power conferences love that thing. It gives them a lot of money, and they don't want to handle putting on an event of their own. But when it comes to governance, it's been very clear the power conferences have been trying to wrestle away some of that power. They, in fact, here within the last couple of weeks are getting voting control over a lot of committees in the NCAA, 65% voting control, which means they can pretty much decide what they want to do within some committees. And then also the CSC is going to be handling a lot of things when it comes to major college sports, whether it's basketball, football, when it comes to some governance and stuff. So it's another conversation for another day, whether football breaks away or anything like that. I actually talked to Charlie Baker, the NCAA president, earlier this week for an interview with CBS Sports HQ. And he didn't seem all that concerned about it, but he understands that the power conferences are so much more different, even from what they were 5 years ago, when it was obvious that they were, they're part of the Autonomy Five. They had some sway in the room, but now more so than ever, they're pretty much a separate entity, but they're still going to be in the NCAA as long as the NCAA is able to handle all those other championship events outside football. John, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're getting to your point, Brandon, they're getting the best of both worlds, right? They don't have to handle all of the tough stuff. And I've said this, plenty of times in the past, but, we think about the NCAA and we kind of put it over the entire thing. Like the NCAA makes no money from football. They get all the bad stuff that no one wants, the compliance issues, all that stuff, academics, and they get no revenue from it. So these power conferences, they're giving all the stuff that nobody wants to deal with to the NCAA, and then they get all the money. So it's a pretty good deal for them. They're going to continue to threaten if they have to leave. Happened a couple of years ago with college football playoff. SEC and Big Ten got more money, more power. We recently saw the Power Four get more power, NCAA governance. They'll threaten it if they have to, but as it stands right now, like, does the SEC Power Four group, do they want to have to put together the track championships every year? No, they don't, because it doesn't make any money. And that's the reason why the NCAA does what it does. Like, if they could make a lot of money on it and it wasn't hard to do, they would take it over, but they don't. They like having football, and the NCAA can have the rest.
I do want to quickly say, Matt in the comments section did note that this is a little discussed portion of this. He's correct. That Michigan did self-impose a 3-game suspension on Jim Harbaugh during the 2023 season.
Right, at the end of the season, during their championship season.
Yeah, and like 3 very important games down the stretch too. So it's not as
the Maryland game was the most important, but yeah.
Obviously. Like nobody questions that. What was the Penn State game, right? Didn't they not throw the ball in the entire second half? Yeah, that was Sharon Moore's I believe head coaching debut, but that was a significant penalty during the season. Michigan self-imposed that.
And by the way, at the time, that was being pressured by a lot of Big Ten programs. Like, you need to act on this right now on a commissioner level to send a message to Michigan.
So it is unfair to say nothing happened to them during the 2023 season. Michigan ultimately went out and won those games. And I think Michigan went out and ultimately fairly won a national championship. I don't know how you can deny that based on what happened on the field. But I do still think there's a sense in the Big Ten and college football at large that not enough happened at that time, even with the Harbaugh suspension. And I know Michigan fans are never going to agree on that point. And I totally understand, like, ultimately they won a championship, but it is important to acknowledge that 3-game suspension did happen.
Yeah, and unique. I mean, I think that's what's so hard about this is that even in this new model, like the CSC promising faster penalties, things like that, I hope that's the case. It'd be great. But when we've seen some of these big scandals break out, I think about baseball and the Astros, like, it takes time to put together the necessary pieces. The Michigan one was unique too. And, I'll do a quick plug here. My book, The Price, we write about it a lot. And there was a lot of behind the scenes threats of lawsuits and all these different things that you have to be very careful. And it ultimately, Michigan pressured Harbaugh to take it. He did not want to take it. His lawyer, Tom Mars, was ready to battle. They were ready to sue everybody, basically. And ultimately, it was like, this is for the betterment of everybody. But it's hard to force that. And I think even this new model, if something happens at Alabama, does Greg Sankey want to have to step in and do it? It's really tough. And that's when, again, it's easier to blame the NCAA than when the call is coming from inside the house. Nobody really wants to deal with that. So it's a unique situation.
That's what the money's for. That's why the NCAA, they push it all out on them. That's what you're the fall guy for us in a lot of ways, even though the NCAA answers to the presidents, the commissioners, and everybody else. So they are what they eat. We're going to have a lot more here. We're going to take a break real quick. So we encourage you in the chat, if you got any questions, drop them in there. We've been seeing some really good comments in there, some good questions. We're going to come back right now. There's actually an NCAA press conference going on, so we're monitoring that. We're going to take a quick look at some of those things. In addition, John's got some reporting to share here right after the break. You're watching the College Football Insiders. Make sure to stick around.
Here we go. The 2025 CBS Sports NFL schedule is here. 18 glorious Sundays.
He's got his receiver touchdown.
Filled with rematches.
Oh, the play of the year.
And rivalries.
Touchdown, Bengals.
Plus, plenty of superstar showdowns. And an epic matchup between the Chiefs and Cowboys on Thanksgiving. Clear your Sundays beginning September 7th for the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus.
Welcome back, College Football Insiders. This is an emergency podcast. The NCAA is currently having a press conference discussing the sanctions they have levied against Michigan and the parties that were involved, most of them no longer at Michigan other than Sharon Moore. A couple of quick notes from there from what we're seeing coming across the Twitter machine. The chief hearing officer for the NCAA, Norman Bay, saying about Connor Stallions, you don't put together a network of individuals called the KGB that records dirty film where the cost is in the tens of thousands of dollars unless you intend to gain a substantial competitive advantage. And of course, there are a lot of reports and rumors out there about where's he getting the funding. I mean, Connor Stallions is not getting paid a lot of money. They were never able to substantiate those claims, which the NCAA admits in their report that was released today. So, and the NCAA also admits that they do not understand the entire scope of this entire scheme because a lot of records were intentionally destroyed or they're unable to uncover some things, or folks like Connor Stallions and others just didn't cooperate completely and fully. So again, I think in a lot of ways, because this investigation went so long, in a lot of ways you can lawyer up, prepare yourself. I mean, you look throughout this document, you see Michigan arguing just even like single words or phrases in NCAA bylaws, trying to interpret things very much like a lawyer and you would see in court cases when they have some time. Jim Harbaugh, of course, they couldn't find a way to directly tie him to him, but he oversees the program. That's why he receives such a large show cause penalty of 10 years. He's obviously now in the NFL, gone from college football, but still some reaction there, right?
Yeah, so I reached out to his lawyer, Tom Mars, and Tom always makes me laugh with some of his comments. These are the two that he said I can attribute to him. I don't know how Jim feels about it, but I know how upset I would be if I got banned from appearing in traffic court. That's the first one. And the second one, tying into the hamburger stuff, That show cause makes me think Jim must have thrown a Subway sandwich at the COI when I wasn't looking. So that's what Tom, how he feels about Jim's 10-year show cause penalty. I feel like we had to share those. He's a good follow if you want to see him let it rip at times. But again, Jim was such a central piece of this, and we can move on here in a second. But I do think the question that no one can answer, and when I was working on this book, we delved into Michigan a lot. The question that we really want to figure out that I don't think anyone really knows is how much did Jim know, right? I think we talked to people very close to him that swear he did not know. There's other people, outside of the situation that, or how could he not know? And I can even remember talking to Mike Loxley, the Maryland head coach, who employed Josh Gaddis, who was mentioned in the report, was there involved. And he told me, he's like, I pulled him aside. I was like, tell me the truth. Did you know? What did Jim know? And he said that Jim did not know. But again, it's hard to ever know. And as we mentioned earlier, he's never coming back to college football, so it doesn't necessarily matter. But I do think that impacts a little bit maybe how you feel about these penalties, that if Jim knew, if he was instructing people to pay for it, then these penalties are light. If you have more of a rogue person, the way that Connor Stallions has been portrayed at times, then maybe it feels a little bit more fair.
I mean, it's very clear that they were trying to do that. I mean, for all reasons and purposes, that Connor Stallions was a rogue agent. And, but I'm going to get to some interesting quotes that I found throughout this document, which ties into what you were saying. Did Jim Harbaugh know? Did he know? Like the meme is. In this, it says that an intern reported to raise some concerns about everything that was going on with Connor Stallions. And the intern said, quote, when I brought up the sign stealing, a coach told me he didn't want to hear any more about that. Again, plausible deniability, as they say. I don't want to hear it. Out of sight, out of mind. But you do you in a lot of ways. But
sounds like my wife when I eat a whole box of Oreos overnight and she just sees the thing in the middle and she's like, I don't even want to know.
Yes. Also, this is an interesting quote as well. Back in late October 2023, when this was all breaking and everybody's trying to figure everything out, a recruiting staffer in a text exchange was talking about the Michigan compliance office. And this is what it said, quote, Michigan's compliance staff are shitty at their jobs and actively working against us from the inside. True scum of the earth.
Jeez.
Can you imagine what it was like to be a compliance officer of some sort at Michigan while this was all going on? And I mean, talk about difficult.
I mean, being a compliance officer, I don't think people understand what compliance officers have to do. They're essentially the hall monitor for a lot of schools, in the building. And I mean, they view their jobs in different ways in some cases, and different schools will handle it a different way. But you're really your responsibility is to tell people no all the time, right? That's what you're there for. And I cannot imagine what it would be like to be the compliance officer at Michigan in 2023 with all of that going on.
And you guys know this too. Coaches are so not all, but some coaches are very paranoid. There's a lot of they're out to get us type stuff. And I think that compliance gets treated that way a lot where, you're trying to prevent us from doing this, trying to do that. And again, Jim Harbaugh, unique character, ruffled some feathers everywhere he's ever worked. And so you could see him promoting an environment of keep it all in house. Those people are not trying to help us win. We need to focus on ourselves. And I've seen that play out in other places around the country. And it's, like you said, Chris, being a compliance person, especially in this current world we're in, about as thankless of a job as possible.
They don't get paid enough, dude. They really don't. I know we say that about a lot of industry, but good gosh, talk about a thankless job, as you mentioned. Also, this press conference continues. The Committee on Infractions Chairman Norman Bay talking about what they perceived as obstruction by Jim Harbaugh and Connor Stallions throughout this investigation. Quote, it made what would have been a serious violation even more serious. The violation was serious to begin with, but the cover-up was maybe even worse. And again, the NCAA admitting in their report released today, they will never truly know the scope of just how deep and far this went into it. In fact, along those lines, a quote from inside this NCAA investigation where they say that Connor Stallions was talking to a student athlete that was involved in all this, tied up in all this, the sign stealing scandal. And he told the player, quote, again, if you just stick to that story, you're good. Whatever you say is your story, and that's going to be what the truth is. this is also not the court of law. You can technically lie your ass off. And Connor Stalions not completely off base there, guys. We know that. I mean, it isn't like the NCAA can subpoena all your documents and all this other stuff. And unless someone completely goes against what you're saying, then you're good as gold. That's why a lot of folks out there always say, you can cheat all you want, but just don't get caught in a lie. Just don't lie. But
my grandma always said that for sure, Brandon.
You can lie, but here's the thing. You can lie all you want, but just don't get caught. Don't let them know that you're actually lying.
Well, and just make a quick point here. Like, again, I think part of why this became what it was, I remember talking to someone very close to the investigation situation, and it was kind of the belief, which I've heard a lot with NIL too. It's like everyone's speeding, but they were going 120 miles down the highway. And that's why I think it became such a big deal. Everyone's looking for edges and advantages. And like, if everyone's going 70, 75, it's fine. The Michigan sign stealing thing was so aggressive and egregious to the people involved in football, they felt like we had to do something here. So sign stealing is well known. Everyone's trying to do it, but the level that Stalions took it to was so beyond the pale that they felt like they had to weigh in hard here. And so I think that's something that's kind of, worth noting there.
I'm going to throw out a philosophical question as we near the end of this emergency podcast. How many programs do you think out there, if you told them you would get some penalties along these lines and have to pay $35 million to win a national championship, they'd be willing to do it?
How many teams are in the FBS, Brandon? 137?
There you go.
There we go.
Again, that tells you just how much of a slap on the wrist this really can be perceived. Michigan got a national championship out of it, and a lot of the coaches that would have been penalized are gone. And so the program only has to write out a check. I think of this more or less as just like a 10% tax for winning a national championship.
Well, real quick, and I think that's a good way to, Brandon, real quick, to get into a couple of the anonymous quotes. Matt Zenitz and I have kind of been gathering them on the back end a little bit from people in the Big Ten. And a Big Ten assistant coach basically said, what a joke like this is. The ruling adds the untouchable perception of Michigan. You basically pay $20 or $30 million and this goes away and you get to keep your national championship. And not everybody in the Big Ten feels that way. I texted a couple people that were just like, who cares? It's 2 years ago. Right. But like, I think there's a sense of frustration around the conference and around college football in general that like you can win a national championship by cheating. But at the same time, like this is college football and cheating is like breathing, right? Like we've seen different variations of this. This was just, to your point, speeding to a high degree. But I do think there are some people around that conference that are very frustrated by this. And this is kind of the finality of it. So it's just over. And like Michigan is a national champion, that those rings are going to stay there. That banner is going to stay there. And at the end of the day, like who cares? Jim Harbaugh doesn't care if he can't come back to college football, right? He's coaching Justin Herbert for the next decade. So just.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off. No, but to your point, I think like if the CSC didn't exist, I think to your point, Chris, you could see teams saying, all right, they've already kind of been doing this, but even more so of like cheating's fair game. Let's rock. Let's push it beyond, because like you said, if it's only paying 25, 30, 35 million for a national championship, we will all do it. But we haven't seen the CSC weigh in on anything yet, right? So they might absolutely crush people. I know Brandon and I, we've reported on some of the potential penalties if you go against some of their core rules. They're very strong. And so it's one of those things where I've seen some of the takes of like, well, it just means cheating's fair game. You can do whatever you want. Well, maybe, but I wouldn't want to be the first one to get caught in this new model and get absolutely hammered and be wondering why I didn't get the same deal that Michigan got because I'm in a new world and I was the first one to really feel the pain of that.
Yeah, I've had athletic directors straight up tell me that they want to see the very first violator, serious violator, to get hammered because they think that's what will end up sending a message to everyone. And it's just a matter of time before we get there. There's always going to be someone that gets caught cheating and doing so at a massive level. And who's that going to be? We'll find out. And it's going to be fascinating to see how the CSC actually works, to be quite honest, because they're still trying to figure it out on the go.
100%. Hey, Brandon, real quick before we, I know we're getting close to the end of this emergency experiment. I just wanted to touch on Michigan real quick as a program and kind of where they're at. I was texting with a couple people there in the wake of this, right? And I think the commonality is relief. Like there's just a lot of relief in that program to finally have this in the rearview mirror. It helps when you're going 120, it gets in the rearview mirror a little bit faster, but like Michigan can move on from this. And I will say it's not like it's been affecting Michigan's production, right? Like last cycle, Michigan, as this investigation is going on, signs the number 1 recruit in the country, Bryce Underwood. This year, Michigan's sitting at number 11 in the 2026 class rankings. Like I had somebody text me essentially that like this hasn't had made an iota of difference on the way Michigan's recruited. And I don't really think they believe the like penalties in terms of official visit hours. And to explain that, by the way,
I want to know about that because to set that up real quick, part of the penalties is a 25% reduction of football official visits, but we saw recently they've and the NCAA is lifted. You can have unlimited official visits. So how does that pertain to Michigan reducing
unlimited visits for athletes? They can go to as many schools as they want. Schools are still restricted to, I believe, 70 official visits. But I mean, if you're selective, and Michigan already is more selective in terms of who they bring on campus than most schools, it's not that big of a hindrance. Like it's not nearly as big of a hindrance as like a reduction in scholarships would have been once upon a time.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point earlier, Brandon, about that, you mentioned like the penalties with scholarships, and it could be up to 105. I think most schools in the Big Ten are sitting at 85. The SEC kind of set the way on that when it said everybody's staying at 85 for the year. And the large majority of teams in college football have stuck to that. But as terms of Michigan, like I think they're happy to move on, but it doesn't really affect anything that's going to happen when they step on the field in week 1. And I don't think it's going to affect their recruiting much at all.
That's the other thing. I mean, Sharon Moore, he has to sit out 2 games this upcoming season, but he still gets to coach week 1 and week 2. He doesn't serve until week 3 and week 4. And week 2 is when he goes back to his alma mater and will coach against Oklahoma in a massive week 2 game between 2 nationally ranked programs and obviously blue bloods and historic programs. And he gets to get to coach that. And the reason for that is because Michigan was able to step in early, self-impose that, and the NCAA went, that's fine by us, but also we need to add another game to that, and that's the game we get to choose, and that game will be your season opener in 2026. So Sharon Moore gets to coach against his alma mater, and he misses out next year on a trip to Germany.
Listen, credit to Michigan for being proactive and doing it, but it is wild to me that I feel like, not that long ago, it's like, all right, if you're getting suspended 3 games, it's the first 3 games. I like that we can just pick random games now. Like, if you're in the SEC, take the second to last week against an FCS game. That's when I'm suspended. I don't know. I think it's kind of funny that we're just, hey, first 2 games are important. I'm not getting suspended for those. I'll take 3, 4 instead. It's just kind of funny. But hey, good gamemanship from Sharon Moore in Michigan there.
One thing we got confirmed from all this, by the way, which if it wasn't obvious enough from the video and screenshots we saw, that was Connor Stallions standing on the sideline. Which game was that? Was that Central Michigan?
Michigan State.
Michigan State. Yeah.
He was out there scouting Michigan State. The NCAA confirmed in a report that was indeed Connor Stallions.
Not just that, like they said in that thing, he was also helping with Central Michigan's play calling.
He was helping with play calling,
which is
does Central Michigan not get in hot water for that?
They have a new coach, but
they do, and I think if you connect the dots and go look at who was let go at Central Michigan
staff turnover
around that time, you can tell it somebody.
It hasn't gotten talked about enough, and maybe Chris, maybe you're going to hit on this in your takeaway is like the biggest winners and losers, but like Jim McElwain's got to be up there just for that. Like I saw people kind of make the comparison. Like, could you imagine a Kirby Smart or Nick Saban, who McElwain's a disciple of, just having a random guy helping with play calling on the sideline? Like, I think they would lose their minds. It's just kind of pathetic, really, that was able to happen in the way that it did.
Yeah.
Well, their play caller at the time is a guy named Jake Costner, who people were very high on in the industry as like a future star. He was on my 30 under 30 list a couple of years back, and he was calling the plays for them that season, former Michigan staffer himself. And he is not employed at the moment that I'm aware of. So there has been some penalties to his career for sure.
I want to ask a really wild question, guys. Connor Stallions, who built this KGB network, as it's been described, and helped write a Michigan manifesto for the future of Michigan football in the future, and put together this wide scheme to figure out play calling signs across the country for Michigan opponents. He still wants to coach. He was coaching in high school ball last year. Didn't do very well, by the way. His 8-year show cause penalty. He will be 38 years old when that ends. Do we see him coaching college football when he's in his 40s?
I hope so. I don't have an actual answer to that, but man, that would be a juicy storyline.
As driven as he is, you would think so. He's going to find a way.
Yeah, I mean, I think my answer is no, but yeah, I agree with Chris. It'd be great. I also think maybe he's not spy worthy, but maybe FBI needs to look into, maybe they can mold him. He's got a good start. He's got to work again on his burner game, but he's been able to build a team of operatives. I don't know, maybe I watched too many spy movies, but that seems to be a skill we might need more of.
Or he could be an investigative journalist.
I mean,
not a lot of money in that, but you can go do that.
I can think of a few stories he could start with that we probably have some inside information on. So
we did just lose the Dodfather. Maybe we bring in Connor Stallions, add him to the team.
Yeah.
Well, I think didn't Dennis have the last big interview? I would love a Connor Stallions press conference personally, and I think Dennis got the only Connor Stallions press conference.
Yeah.
We lost our lead. We lost our lead horse. Let's bring in the Stallions. Okay. All right, guys, let's close this up. Final thoughts on all of this. Chris, let's start with you.
10,000-foot view. These are significant penalties to Michigan's bottom line. I think it's going to affect the way their athletic department operates the next year or two as they navigate getting more money and figure out a way to fundraise more money. But at the end of the day, Michigan is the 2023 national champion. I think this ending starts a new era of Michigan football in a way. Almost all the staffers from 2023 are gone except for Sharon Moore. They're recruiting at a high level. Bryce Underwood's going to start for them 99%. And they're entering a new era of Michigan football, and they can move past this. And I think this just brings some finality to that chapter of both Michigan and really the NCAA enforcement model.
We were joking how funny it would be if Michigan just ignores this, doesn't even send out a statement, but announces Bryce Underwood's the starting quarterback.
Be a great move. Yeah, I mean, I think to Chris's point, one, I'm thankful this is over. It feels like a lifetime ago. I know it's only 22 or so months ago, but it just feels so long ago, just how much the game has changed in that time frame. So I'm happy that it's over. I think that Chris nailed it. It's an opportunity for them to move past this, move into this new era without this kind of hanging over them. And I think ultimately, how you view this is in the eye of the beholder. I think there are people who are going to view this championship as tainted. They might have already believed that, but I think the NCAA's findings, if you want to come to that conclusion, gives you a lot to work with. And on the flip side, if you're a Michigan fan, you might be upset with some of what you saw happen today, but I don't think it diminishes in your eyes that they won the national championship, that they were the best team that year. And that, again, I think the Harbaugh thing is important for some of those fans, that Harbaugh still has some plausible deniability that he was not the one orchestrating, leading all these different things with that group. So it's kind of it's a great, wild college football story, one that I'll probably never forget where I was when it first broke. And just the conclusion is perfectly college football. Some people are going to be mad. Some are going to like it. No one's going to be happy. That's college football.
That's what makes college sports unique, is just the weirdness there is. And there's always something that comes out of left field you're not expecting. No one knew who Connor Stallions was 3 years ago. Now everybody in college football knows who he is. The dude had a freaking documentary made about him, about all of this, which the NCAA mentions in their reports saying, how dare he?
By the way, I'm sorry, Brendan. Isn't it crazy that a whole Netflix documentary was made? They can't make 2 seasons of Wednesday within 4 years of each other, but they made an entire Connor Stallions documentary before the NCAA finished their investigation. But anyway, I'm sorry.
I just want them to ramp up season 3 of Tires. I want Tires back on Netflix.
Great show. I was just say, speaking of the wildness, we haven't even mentioned, he allegedly, I know they never figured out the conclusion, but allegedly was selling vacuums to help pay for this operation. That's just one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard.
It's a 1956 thing. I went door to door selling vacuum cleaners.
Yeah, that was his.
They could suck your bowling ball
for this operation. It's crazy.
That's why I love college sports. Now, I don't like having to cover it when it comes to all these weird investigations and everything, and everybody being so secret. That's the only, I would say, thing that I do not like about any of this, is just how misleading people can be that are involved in all of this, and just the straight up lying about things. And it makes it entertaining, but man, to stand on a high horse and say, we're not that type of people. We don't never do that. And yet this comes out, and it comes out you're interfering with the investigation. You're not being forthcoming and all that. I mean, it's obviously a bad look, but again, we're in this age just culturally. Not to get on a soapbox or whatever, but we're in an age now where if you just have enough money, you can pay for something to go away. And college athletics is very much in that era now, because it used to be postseason bans and all that stuff. They've changed the rules. We're in a rev share era now. A lot of things have changed, and now it's pretty much we're just going to hit you with financial penalties. You're going to have to pay up a little bit. And the fact of the matter is the blue blood programs have that money, and they're going to deal with it. And so be it if a few coaches, assistant coaches have to pay for it by getting fired and losing their jobs. And then the main guy in charge can just go off and go get another job or a bigger job. That's the world we live in, folks. But there's always Saturday. We always have Saturdays. And man, I can't wait. Hey, this is our last weekend without football, guys. Isn't that awesome? That's great. So we'll be back Monday with a regular episode of College Football Insiders, where it's going to be game week 0. We will be discussing games coming up. Also, camp intel, as we've been delivering you some scoop here from our team of insiders with CBS Sports. Thanks for joining us as we broke this all down. Michigan and their penalties from the NCAA tied to the sign stealing scandal. I'm Brandon Marcello for John Talty and Chris Hummer. We will see you down the road.